stand by for action.
Thanks, gentlemen. My name is Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy, and I want to welcome you to part one of this episode of the Unpleasant Blind Guy on EDL Radio. Now remember, if you want to contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, Awesome American suggestions, I'm available at UBG Contact on Twitter, on social media or I can also be found as Dave Milner or Agador, that's Aggedor, on Mublet, the Tea Party Community, Spreely, Minds, MeWe, or Gab. Now let's begin.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
This is Robert St. John in the NBC newsroom in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be approaching a fateful hour. All night long, bulletins have been pouring in from Berlin claiming that D-Day is here, claiming that the invasion of Western Europe has begun. Let me read you several of the latest bulletins. One says that a report, unconfirmed by Allied sources, of course, says that heavy fighting is taking place between the Germans and invasion forces on the Normandy Peninsula, about 31 miles southwest of Le Havre. Another bulletin, also from Berlin radio and unconfirmed, says that British-American landing operations against the western coast of Europe from the sea and from the air are stretching over the entire area between Cherbourg and Le Havre, a distance of about 60 miles. I repeat, there is no confirmation. And here's another bulletin just in. DNB, the German agency, says, this is unconfirmed, that the most important airdromes in the area of the Normandy Peninsula of France have been wiped out. Now, I presume that means wiped out by the Allies. As you may have heard on earlier broadcasts, all three German news agencies have begun broadcasting these stories that the invasion is here. But there is no Allied confirmation as yet. The first report came out shortly after midnight, and since then we've been flooded with reports from Berlin. Paris radio, strangely enough, has not confirmed any of these reports. And now we have just been informed that we can expect in a very few seconds, a very important broadcast from the British capital. And so now we take you to London.
The text of communique number 1 will be released to the press and radio of the United Nations in 10 seconds. Repeat, 10 seconds from now.
This is Robert St. John of the NBC Newsroom in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be approaching a fateful hour. All night long, bulletins have been pouring in from Berlin claiming that D-Day is here. But there is no Allied confirmation as yet. The first report came out shortly after midnight, and since then we've been flooded with reports from Berlin. Paris radio, strangely enough, has not confirmed any of these reports. And now we take you to London. This is London. London calling in the home, overseas, and European services of the BBC and through United Nations Radio Mediterranean. And this is John Snagg speaking. Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, have just issued communique number 1, and in a few seconds I will read it to you. Under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces, supported by strong air forces, began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France. I'll repeat that communique. Communique number 1. Under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces, supported by strong air forces, began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is New York, NBC Newsroom again. Men and women of the United States, this is a momentous hour in world history. This is the invasion of Hitler's Europe, the 0 hour of the Second Front. The men of General Dwight Eisenhower are leaving their landing barges, fighting their way up the beaches into the fortress of Nazi Europe. They are moving in from the sea to attack the enemy under a mammoth cloud of fighter planes, under a ceiling of screaming shells from Allied warships. The first news flashes do not say, but a large proportion of this assault is believed to be in the hands of American men. They are making the attack side by side with the British Tommies who were bombed and blasted out of Europe at Dunkirk. Now, at this hour, they are bombing and blasting their way back again. This is the European front, once again being established in fire and blood, not only by the Americans and British, but by many allies in the fight against Axis aggression.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the English Defence League radio show. The story tonight is invasions. Let me just read out the script, and I've got to thank Dave for the slides. I've got to thank Dave for that moving audio clip. Thank you, Dave. It's brilliant, brilliant. I say welcome to the English Defence League radio show with your host. That's me, Jeff Spider Mitchell. My panellists this evening, very grateful tonight, are Jan the Tornado Rene and Dave Agador Milner. Tonight we will be discussing invasions. The left's protests of President Donald John Trump's state visits to the United Kingdom, as if it were an invasion, and a true invasion of the UK and the civilised world, from diseased, socially limited, Islamo-fascist nations, whose people refuse to assimilate to the countries they overwhelm with the help of the power-hungry left. We also remember and give grateful thanks to those Allied forces who participated in Operation Overlord, the invasion of occupied Normandy on this day, the 6th of June, 1944. Though corrupt socialist and communist politicos and appointed bureaucrats tried to make Hitler's dream of a European trading bloc come true forever, they will never succeed. We will honour the sacrifices made to keep us sovereign 75 years ago. They did not surrender then, and we won't surrender now. No surrender ever. All that is necessary for evil to prevail is that good men do nothing. And that was by the great late Edmund Burke. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And that was by another great man, President John F. Kennedy. Without further ado, let me bring my awesome panelist in this evening. And that's Jan the Tornado Rennie and Dave Agador Milner. Good evening, my dear friends, and I hope you're well this evening.
Good evening, Jeff and Dave. Yes, I'm doing okay. Glad to be back and talking to you this night, this special occasion on 75 years D-Day landings. It's quite emotional.
Yeah,
did you see that?
I got quite.
90-year-old man parachuting.
That was amazing, Jan. I've never heard that before, and that was probably some of the finest work I've seen Dave put together. And Dave, I know you're there, brother. That moved me again, and I was listening to that, and that's probably done the same to you, Jan. It was moving, sterling stuff, Dave. Thank you.
Well, good evening to you, Jeff. Good evening to everybody in the UK, and good afternoon to everybody in the States and around the world, and of course off Earth. Yes, it was a moving time, and just dripping with irony when you consider today, and that is at least how I intend to approach some of this 75th anniversary of the D-Day landing. So much surrounds it, and so much sacrificed to make sure that Hitler didn't get his way, and yet so many people today working to see that Hitler does get his way. While they call us Nazis, they work to make the Nazi dream come true. It was an emotional time listening to all of the clips, trying to put together something that would be appropriate to start this show off with. And there were things like King George's speech, of course, which is really good. You can find that on YouTube, by the way, folks. There was plenty of BBC radio coverage of D-Day, but we're talking about hours worth of material here. So I came up with that, and hope it satisfies. It kind of gives a sense of the first few moments that people had, knowing that the invasion had started. If you look in the slides, people, at blogtalkradio.com. Yeah, well, thank you. I put in some of them in order, the D-Day slides. In order, I have the landings on Gold Beach and Sword Beach. That was the UK. This is primarily a UK program, so have to show that respect. And then Juno Beach for Canada. And then, of course, Utah Beach and Omaha Beach for the United States. It's been quite a moving set of ceremonies, guys, that have occurred, and looking forward to hearing you guys, your impressions and everything. And we've got a few things involving some of that. So, yeah, guys, I'm looking forward to a program. And yes, I'm very happy to have Jan Rennie back with us to get her perspective on all of this stuff. So.
Yeah, Dave, once again, I think Jan would agree. I think we both listened to that so intensely and quite emotional, because you could imagine back in the day, Dave, and Jane, you know what I'm saying, around the radio, listening, this is your loved ones who's fighting the enemy, and you're not sure whether you're going to see them again or whether, whatever's going to happen. And it was, the fear, the intrepidation. You didn't know how it was going to be. We knew the Americans was having a hard fight on Omaha Beach, and that was, Dave, that was a tough fight, wasn't it? That was, the rest of the battles was tough for us all. But Omaha Beach, there was some heavy fighting, some heavy sacrifice. I think, Dave, I'm not sure of the numbers. I think we were talking close on 10,000 that early morning, wasn't we, Dave? Are we talking about those sort of numbers?
We'll have stats later on, Jeff. Yeah, but
oh, sorry, Dave.
I mean, lots of fighting. In thousands of people or thousands of men dying, and a lot of people had stories out of that. Of course, and Jan, I hope you'll forgive Jeff and me, but of course, James Dewitt, who played Scotty on Star Trek, and a lot of people don't know this. You know, a lot of people who sneer at Star Trek, a lot of people don't know this, but James Doohan was one of the soldiers, one of the Canadian soldiers that landed at Juno Beach on D-Day. And his main comment about the whole experience was that he was less worried about getting shot by the Germans than he was about dying under the weight of all his equipment that he had, which that happened to not a few people, you know. But yeah, that's only one of the many stories. But Jan, your initial thoughts on this time?
The one, obviously, we're all too young to have witnessed it, and as you say, it was done by, you know, afterwards on radio broadcasts that they heard the news of what was happening. But D-Day takes me back, although it's just a movie, is Saving Private Ryan. When you watch the opening scenes of the landings in Omaha and the rest of Utah, and it's just absolutely horrendous that the way they were killed in the sea, the way they were running towards the shore to get into combat. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of lives lost that never even got out to sea, and to me that was so realistic. I find it extremely upsetting and extremely moving that these young men, and even up until you know, middle age, doing what they did that day.
Well, I'll tell you this, Jan. I'll tell you this just as an aside here. There were some D-Day veterans who were invited to go and see the movie, and some of them had to walk out because they said, yeah, that was as close to what really happened as they've ever seen.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. I've watched it quite a few times, the whole movie. There's the one part I do flick past very quickly is when the one boy is so badly injured that they overdose him with morphine over and over again, and he's just crying for his mum. I have to skip past that one.
Yeah.
But very realistic, and it's as though you're almost there with them, and it kind of gives you some light as to what went on. Obviously, you can't experience it because you weren't there. Horrendous. And what really, and I'm gonna cuss now. I'm gonna say what really pisses me off is these low-life scum in the UK right this week calling these men and, you know, Nazis. The very thing they fought all those years for, and they're being called Nazis. This is the ignorant lefties, the ignorant liberals of society.
Oh, yes, I agree with that completely. Jeff, I'm sure you agree with this. It's like, listening to this stuff on the radio. The young people today, and I'm going to sound like an old fart saying this, but then again, I am, to quote my brother, scaring the poop out of 60.
You're still
young
a youngster, Dave.
Yeah, well, they have no concept of information exchange. I mean, back then, this was the largest invasion ever organized in recorded history, and it took literally hours for people to find out about it in the UK and in the States. And radio was there. There was no interaction. Forget interaction. You just had to stand by your radio and wait for bulletins and updates and things of that nature. It was all one way. And, it's fascinating to listen to the stuff from the NBC studios in New York, because they were getting reports from overseas just by shortwave radio. And it just so happened that the conditions were good enough to where they could get them. And a lot of people don't understand that, again, who are younger, that is the way it used to be. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry, Dad. I think a lot of
go ahead.
The things that was coming through to NBC and all these other stations was from like the French Resistance. It was there close by. It was told to attack at the same time, and they were getting messages coming through exactly how things was unfolding. So, you know, I don't think we realised how big this picture really was, do we, Dave? Until we sort of investigate it more of what was involved. Everybody was told, right, this time there's a thing you're going to go, and that's it. And it's an all-out attack against the Nazis, wasn't it? It was such a time. I mean, to look back now, it's very moving because we know of the great sacrifice. Those young men were going into battle, and it must be pretty scary. I don't care who you are, I don't matter how tough you are. To think as soon as you hit the landing craft comes down, you're running towards the beach, you see your friends either side you being shot, you think, I've got to do this, is my job, I've got to do it. But can you imagine that adrenaline that was flying through these young men's bodies as they was running towards the battle? Absolutely.
I would imagine, guys, that the men themselves were not told until a few hours before what they were going into. Unimaginable warfare. But, of course, it was all top secret as it is today. If you think back quickly to 1982 with the Falklands War, I think we waited about a week before we got any news of what was happening. A good week, because my ex-husband and my brother were both there, and we waited on news, and it was quite a while even back in 82. But in them days when you can't have any visuals and just you... And yeah, I agree, it was probably the resistance that got most of the news out, and of course the radios were so important where, they laid the bodies across radios to protect the radios so they could get news back. I mean... Oh, and you know what?
Morse code, how big a thing that was, Jan. Morse code, Jan and Dave would played such a big part in the war, didn't it? Amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's because
it's just
go ahead, Jan.
You know, the whole event, the whole thing, and it's laid heavy with me today. 75 years on, and Jan, I look around, man. I see these pacifists, because that's what they were called. There was a word that they was called. People who didn't want to be involved in fighting in the war. What do they call them? Pacifists or whatever. But this is where we are today with a lot of these call themselves anti-fascists. As
that's what they call them here in the States,
Dave. They're the real
what I'd like to do?
fascists.
Put them in the front line, pick them up, throw them out the boats on the front line, and see what war is.
Well, they don't know what war is.
Maybe.
That's the point.
I think
that's
you've got
the entire
a good
point.
idea there, Jan, and probably same
they
with
have
yourself.
They have no conception.
It just upsets me to think we are, myself, you, Jan, Dave, and many, many others. I mean, the unsung heroes out there. If you're listening, guys, I am talking about you guys, the unsung heroes. We don't want you to be identified because you're doing awesome work. And we're at war. Once again, we're at war with our own governments, our own people. But we've got to fight. I can't believe that we're in this time, Jan. You know, that's what's upset me.
But you know, Jeff,
because we've got to fight again.
Think about this one. I'm going off track a little bit here, but it just shows that we're still outnumbering the leftist liberal morons that we've got in this country. When you think about last week, all that talent that was on Britain's Got Talent show, who won? A 91-year-old man who couldn't really sing. He wasn't great. But he came on in his Chelsea uniform and he sang and he won the final by sheer numbers of telephone calls. So that's a bit of hope that, you know, we still outnumber them. They might be on the streets and barricading pubs and flying Palestinian flags and liberal flags and all the rest of the crap they want to fly, but we still outnumber them. You know, common sense comes to the fore, and I believe
it does. I mean, it's the majority, the silent majority is still there. The silent majority, you know, those ones, so few, like myself, like you, Jan, like the EDL, you know, we know our numbers, but we know there's a great swath of people that follows us across the world. We know that. So we are really important, even though our numbers might not be as great as they was. We're still out there, we're still doing our thing, and the fight continues. And it seems sad that, you know, that we once again, we got government. This government isn't like the government that was during that, 75 years ago. We had a really strong, a man who's a legend. He'll always be my legend. He's one of my heroes. He's one of your heroes, Janet, and I know he's one of Dave's. But this time we live in now is totally different, and that's to what it was back then. There was, I don't know, there was more camaraderie amongst us all. We was all, you know, do things. We also had a dark sense of humour with things, didn't we, you know? It's still there. It's still there, except what we got in front of the enemy now is really sad. That's been indoctrinated in our schools and our universities, and then you're seeing that over in the United States as well, Dave, aren't you? We're seeing this. It's you know, maybe we got to go through these dark times again, Jan and Dave. I don't know, but I will never ever, the same as yourselves and our listeners out there, will never forget the sacrifice that was paid to keep us sovereign, as it said in the script, keep us a sovereign country. But we got a government trying to give it all away once again. They betrayed. This government's betrayed us, haven't they, Jan? Our democracy, they killed our democracy. I'm sorry if I'm a bit emotional, but it's when I think of it in the true light of all the sacrifice that was paid, so that people call themselves in power, the traitors within. They are the true traitors. Can do this to our people. You know, it's just
thinking about what these men died for when we're sitting here giving our governments are giving our countries away. We have another invasion on our hands, and they have already said they don't need to fire a bullet, they'll do it by numbers, and it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we just can't wake people up as to how we're being invaded by as brutal a forces as Nazis, if not worse.
Oh, worse than the Nazis. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing, Jan and Jeff. You know, every time we try and wake these people up and tell them about the dangers of Islam, they insist on talking about radical Islam and you know, giving it the Nigel Farage shtick, which is, that's only a few radicalized Muslims and the rest of them are perfectly peaceful and blah, blah, blah. And it's really difficult to get these people to actually sit down and listen to the truth. And that's that's the struggle. That we're being invaded by people who want to completely wipe out our way of life, and the way of life that it includes equality for everyone. So and yet we're being called the Nazis. Well, guys, I think it's about time. We're about half hour into the show, and Jan, you may not know this, but this particular show is going to be chopped up into thirds, and it's going to be run over at SHR Media under the Unpleasant Blind Guy flag, my flag. I'm also going to be running once in a while, some regular Unpleasant Blind Guy shows. Jan and I have talked about one or two we might do. But we're going to be merged a bit with this show. And this particular show, guys, Well, I've got shows loaded up already, and this particular show that we're doing right now is going to be on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th of July, which I think is very apropos, because just because of the patriotism involved. And Jeff, with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and run the 3.5 minutes of SHR Media promos, and then we'll get right back into this, because I've got an audio after that, Jeff and Jan, from Avi Yemeni talking about President Trump's state visit that really sticks it to the lefties. So Jeff, are you guys?
Looking forward to that.
All right.
Avi Yemeni, he is far too young for me.
She fancies him, Dave. She fancies our Avi.
Yeah, she does. Of course she does. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and play these promos.
We've made her blush now. I've made her blush.
Yeah. Nice one. All right, guys. This is going to be about 3.5 minutes long. You are listening to a special edition of the English Defense League radio show. And this from SHR Media.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunnett. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunnett.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truth on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And that is it for this time. Next time, Part 2. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye.
The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2019. Anno Domini.